Hello and welcome to the Wonkette Weekend Live Chat. Hope you guys are all doing swell today. I'm Robin Panacchia, and this is the lovely and talented Stephen Robinson, who I keep forgetting your middle name because you always like have your initials.
Yes, it is Eric.
Eric. I thought it was Eric, and then I was like, no, I must be lying to myself.
And because my middle initial was always listed, like Stephen E. on the first day of school every year as a kid, it would be Stephanie Robinson, and then everyone would laugh, and that's how the first day of school started for me for pretty much every day of my life. And then I got like a scholarship to an all-girls college in South Carolina to Stephanie Robinson, which I could have gone to in some sort of weird bosom buddies type thing.
Yes. I mean, I've had a gender neutral name all my life and I quite enjoy it. The first day of school, however, was never a great time for me. Always a lot of give me 3 guesses or can I just call you Robin Penn? Which I'm glad that they did not, because I wouldn't want anyone to think that I married Sean Penn. Would not be mad if they were like, weren't you in The Princess Bride? But yeah. Otherwise,
can I just shorten your name out of laziness? Is a so
like, I'm sorry, I can't be bothered.
So this is
I'm an adult person and I can't pronounce something that sounds almost exactly like Pinocchio. That make this kid feel weird instead.
So there's been a weird few days with the assassination of the Speaker of the House. And you covered some of that recently. Can you just speak to it just in general? I mean, most of the folks watching are aware, but just the sort of general sense and then what we've seen kind of as the predictable right-wing response to it. But
I mean, it's a literal assassination attempt. And we need to like be very, very clear, I think, about putting it that way. It's not just like, oh my gosh, this random robber came into the house for no reason. Just like a little, he was a crazy person. Who knows? Like that's not that's not the narrative we want to be going with here. And if you want to be real about shit, we've had some pretty like our presidential assassins and assassins in general have not always been like the most together people. And they have also frequently been pretty radicalized by the right. Like that's a common thing. I could start talking about the Garfield assassination, but no one wants me to do that.
Wasn't that one of the ones the guy just walked up to the president? I think there's one of them where he just
he walked. Well, there were a couple of them like that. This one was he walked up to Garfield and he said, what was it? I am stalwart of the stalwarts. Arthur is president now. Yes, Charles J. Guiteau. Darling said hell. Sorry, got to get my Sondheim on.
Well, I think that goes to because all the crazy conspiracy theories, which we would have expected, but they're often rooted in the idea of our political leaders being, especially at a certain degree of power, untouchable. And so, like, how could someone? And
it feels like a major violation.
All you would need to really do is be willing to die, but it's otherwise than that. It's not that hard for a lot of these people are closer than you would think. I mean, the president and the vice president have a pretty big profile, but the Speaker of the House significantly less so, despite her position. And it is quite disturbing. I mean, she's been a boogeyman for years. The rhetoric about her has been, and it's not like political standpoints, like when they're talking about Newt Gingrich or others in the 90s of like, here's all of her stuff. It's like fantasy type arguments about her as sort of baby killing, radical socialist type stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're not really grounded in legitimate criticism. There's legitimate criticism to be made about literally any human being on Earth, but that's not what they're going for ever in this particular instance. but even if you don't agree with the person, it's still a huge, like you said, it's still like a major violation. It's a major violation, if it happens to anyone, but it's certainly a major violation when it's like someone is specifically targeting the Speaker of the House and, showing up at their house with zip ties. That's that's not a great place to be.
No, and I was talking about this with my wife, and she was sort of like, we don't care much for Ron DeSantis, but she would have been horrified if something like this had happened to him, and especially his spouse. And she just, as probably an inherently decent person, just couldn't comprehend the people who are making literal hammer time jokes about an 82-year-old man with a skull fracture. And there's stuff out there about how he's going to make a full recovery, like, but I don't think it wasn't a skull fracture in, an action movie, right? Where like there's all these injuries that you can
Yeah.
walk away from. He's like 82 years old. That's a pretty serious injury. And people are like, repeatedly. So it's not like it's a unique comment, but they're saying this is the second time he was hammered. And it's like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
what is wrong with you? What is wrong with you people
Um,
that is
I think
somehow
what really needs to happen, though, is, a bunch of people on the left have been hammered, sorry, for saying this, but we do need to keep pushing it and keep bringing it up. And yes, keep hammering on it because, sorry, um, because it is actually important. And also because the right is pushing their narrative way harder. Like they are
absolutely.
going bananas. So, you know, quick redux for those who didn't see the article today or, anything else online. The current right-wing version of this story is that Paul Pelosi was actually in a gay hammer fight with his male prostitute, this left-wing male prostitute lover. And they are like, absolute, this is now canon, and any place that isn't saying it is covering it up. Like literally, they made a thing up and are now mad that it is being covered up. Hillary Clinton posted today about the whole incident, and she gets responded to by Elon Musk, who now owns Twitter, saying, "Oh, there's a
with like
little more to the story,"
in the
citing like
article
this,
it was
like
something that said she was dead 6 years ago. So it's like not the most
yeah,
reputable publication. Oh my God.
no, not so much.
And I've seen some the blue MAGA trolls online going on about how can you dare say that Democrats aren't pushing this? They are speaking out, they are calling out and I mean, these are people who uh I think are addicted to being wrong. Like, and so I don't like to get in the way of anyone's personal
Yeah.
kink. So just be wrong if it makes you feel good. But, seriously, I think if you don't quite get how media narratives are formed and political narratives are like of how anytime, so going back when literally people asking um, Sarah Sanders to leave a restaurant was covered relentlessly, or
Oh
like
yeah,
a comedian making fun of her at what is
because they
historically a
don't drop
roast.
things.
They don't drop it. They were reinforcing it, reinforcing it. Democrats do a lot of things. And it's not about if you, it doesn't mean if I'm on a team that's getting beaten by the Chicago Bulls at its Michael Jordan peak, I need to talk about how my team can improve. And it's ridiculous to then say, well, no, it's that team that's being so mean and scoring all these 3-pointers on us. It's like, okay, well, you can do that, or you can also talk about the ways that you can, in fact, actually win this game. And one of them is like pushing narratives, not backing down from narratives, not asking the questions. So there's always these at long last things that we tend to do, which is just
Mhm.
like, well, maybe McCarthy will say something. It's like, no, actually say that he joked about wanting to strike an 82-year-old woman previously. This is what he wants. That's what Republicans would do. They would say, this is
Republicans aren't going
directly
to
what they
scramble
want.
to be the bigger person
No.
in this particular instance or any instance. And the thing is that no one actually gets any points for being gracious. Like there are no graciousness points to be given. No, see
But
how
it's like
they didn't make this political.
but
No
it's
one
like you don't know
actually gets
how
credit. Yeah.
but you don't
As
know how
much as,
human beings work, right? Like,
yeah.
like if you're in a couple and, if you're the sibling who is never, and you have the sibling who's awful at every family gathering and there's a whole thing about it.
Mhm.
And then it's like someone comes out and just says, okay, can we just lower the temperature as a general sense? It pisses you off because it's like, no, I'm not the one
Yeah.
who needs to look like I'm upset, rightly so. My temperature is rightly elevated because this person did X, Y, and Z. And you need to address the fact this person's doing X, Y, and Z. And I think and so when you get these sort of responses of like, let's all lower the temperature and
Yeah.
kumbaya, as opposed to directly stating this is what Republicans have been pushing for years. So,
It's very much, I think, the difference between what people say they want and what people actually do respond to. Because, you'll always hear people saying, oh, we don't want to see things politicized. And, we want people to be gracious and, we want them to be beautiful, but not know it. Like, and just, stand on their own, like laurels or whatever. And in reality, people don't actually respond to that. They don't, like, they actually do respond to points being driven over and over and over again. And the right does it whether or not it's true. We need to do it when, like, at least when it's true. Like, that is, we have to. People are lying. It's like when, people say, oh, I don't want people to help me in stores, but in reality, they do buy more when you sell them things. Like,
well, it's a common Republican response to criticize Biden, and he did this to Obama. So, frankly, Biden has no one to really blame but himself on this. But the idea of like, oh, you campaigned on unity, and then now you are calling out Republicans after campaigning on unity. And what that doesn't do is, well, okay, Trump was not campaigning on unity, so I don't know why you think unity was a very important thing. And what happened after Biden won the election? So there's some world where, like, okay, we had an election, I won, you tried to steal it from me. Generally, people don't like it when you try to steal things from them. That's like a general human. You tried to steal it from me, then you try to overturn, you tried to attack the Capitol, and people died. So yes, I'm real mad. And I think he was actually very gracious, all things considered, for Republicans in general. But when he called out specific Republicans, but that's interesting because, again, the Republicans don't run from this. So the general Republican Party would be and he tries, he says the MAGA Republicans, then they say, no, you're talking about all 74 million Republicans or who voted.
And their hearts break. And here's the thing, they do this thing really well. And I was talking about this on Twitter earlier. They're very good at this, like, oh my God, he says these things about American citizens just because they hold a slightly different point of view. And they're really good at it. And they're really good at this, if this had been in the reverse, if someone had gone after, McCarthy or whoever.
McConnell,
McConnell, one of them, it would have been, oh my God, why do you people love violence? Why are you attacking us like this? Oh my God, why, like, aren't you going to disavow this? Why won't you disavow this? And
they would say they aren't going to disavow us. They're bad people. And Marjorie Greene has already claimed that Democrats are killing Republicans. So, but yeah, like with the MAGA Republican thing, when they hit Democrats on socialism or police reform or tactics like that, Democrats, a lot of mainstream Democrats can't resist saying, no, we're not like those guys. I don't like those
Yeah.
guys either. So they never do the whole thing of where, no, no, no. What you say about the fringest members of us
Mhm.
is actually all of us. And Republicans do it consistently. Republicans are like, no, no, we're not going to give you an out. Even though they talk about the radical left, including
Mhm.
everyone from Harris, Biden to
Well,
Warren.
because they're very set in this narrative of it doesn't count because they're not the real Americans. So they
Yeah.
can trash us because all of America is against these people. What are you talking about? So they don't, they present themselves as the majority, as what people want. They walk into the room, they're like, everyone wants a piece of this. And Democrats stand up against the wall, waiting for someone to realize, that even though they are wearing a giant taco hat, that if, given a proper makeover by Prince Jr.'s sister, they could be the belle of the ball. Like it's this very like, oh my God, no one's gonna like stand actually, knows, oh, you've been the one all along. That doesn't actually happen. And if you present, yourself like, yeah, like if you present yourself like, yes, we are, representative of the majority. This is who we are. We're, what the people want. Other people are going to go along with you because they're lazy. If you're like, oh, who, us, this old thing, people will, be like, oh, okay, you're the foremost authority on you. What I do think would, and I just said this on Twitter, and I know no one's going to really agree with me, but oh my God, the people who, do all this, like the complaining about do something Twitter and blah, blah, blah. If they could take that exact tenor and energy and deploy it against the right, that would be enormously effective. It has the exact same like pitch and tone as the, oh my God, why do you want to throw some milkshakes at us? We were just asking questions. Like it's the same sort of
Yeah.
vibe. And if they could take that and do it there instead of at, us every time that we say anything that they remotely disagree with, that would be enormously
Some of
effective.
these folks crave power, right? So
Yeah.
if you respect power, you're going to respect moderate Republicans, reigning
Mhm.
Republicans. They are people in power, and they're not icky hippies or something like that. But the interesting thing about the complaints about do something was this whole idea of like wait and time, as if time was on your side, or that winning elections when against a fascist party, you didn't have to actually do something radical. You could just, so the options would be either to respond as you would have in a normal state of affairs, which clearly is not the case with what the escalating violence and escalating coup efforts that Republicans were taking, or to go back in time and vote for Hillary Clinton, which is impossible,
Yeah.
or go back in time and stop NATO, and then we would all wind up dying in preventable seatbelt deaths. That's like one of those accidents where you prevent Gore
Yes.
wins, but Twilight Zone ends, like Gore is winning, but like your grandmother dies in a
Oh
preventable
my
seatbelt
God.
death, and you're
This is
like,
can we write this movie?
Rod Serling comes. Stephen Robinson didn't realize.
Yeah.
No. Uh, so, but
Oh my God.
but the weird thing about they're not looking at the competition. So Republicans are never saying, "Hey, all of you election deniers are whiny brats. Like, look, we lost, but look, we're gonna push the economy, the inflation, and we're going to get back in power, and it's going to be awesome, and we just don't do all this stuff about do something about election reform. We can't live with, we can't dwell in the past. They didn't do that. Instead, it's like, no, we're going to talk about election reform all the time. We can actually do something about it to where we can fix future elections, even though they might not have to, because they've hammered Democrats on messages so effectively. And that brings up, you'd written about this. So there's a direct line between Republican messaging on
Mhm.
Portland, because a lot of people were like, why are they talking about Portland? It wasn't on fire. Why are they talking about Portland and Seattle on Fox News every day? But there are Republicans, but not just Republicans, like moderates who are voting for Democrats in those states, especially in rural areas, who do watch Fox News.
Yeah.
And now we might wind up with a Republican governor because they effectively hammered that for 2 years.
Mhm.
And it would be as if Rachel Maddow or Chris Hayes or someone on the left were talking about um, a rural area and meth and whatever, and hammering this area as such a crap hole so effectively that they were able to make a switch, and Democrats were able to flip this red state. We don't really do that. We now are
Well,
trying to say
it
that
would
more
feel
people.
gross. Like, I don't think I certainly wouldn't be comfortable doing that. I in no way feel comfortable ever being like, haha, it's funny when people are poor and addicted to meth. That is, wow.
Well, I would say what they do, and I think we could do more of, is who is the
Mhm.
victim here. So what they find is there's a victim to everything. And I
Yeah.
think and they try to be like, we or have the true humanitarian solution for homelessness, though, it means just shipping them to liberal towns, which is what's going to happen. I mean,
It
drafting
also
will
means
definitely
literally
ship them.
they want to make homelessness illegal. They're like, if we arrest people for being homeless, there won't be any more homeless people.
We'll just lock them up. They're not homeless anymore, and it will make money in our for-profit prisons. But they also say the true victim in these areas are you. You don't want to look at these homeless people. You don't want to deal with this. And that's been so much of Republican rhetoric. And you had Lindsey Graham talking about with Herschel Walker that, this will prove that we're not racist.
Yeah.
And aren't you tired of being called a racist because you're Republican? So trying to get at the sense of there might be a remnant of a human soul in you, but
Yeah.
whatever that is, these guys are bad for making you feel guilty in any way. And so you
Mhm.
shouldn't feel guilty. You should be glad about your awfulness. And they are making quite a bit of hay on that.
Oh,
But yeah,
yeah, because here's the thing, people love you for the way you make them feel about themselves. If they make you feel good and like you're the best person and you're hanging out with the best crowd, you go with the in crowd, you go where the in crowd goes, um, then you feel awesome. You feel like, this is a great place for me. And that's just kind of how people are. People don't really, you know, it's something that people respond to, especially if they're insecure. Um,
oh, absolutely. And I think after there was incident with Ukraine, where some progressive Congress people had released some letter, and one response to it from one guy I saw online was like, "Oh, and he does this frequently. It will be like, we just need to Democrats need to disavow all progressives. They do us no good." And it's like, all right,
yeah,
fine, but how? What you do need these people to vote for you, and there's always a sense of either they don't vote. So it's like Schrodinger's leftists. They either don't vote reliably or they are solely responsible for 2000 and 2016.
yeah,
You can't have it kind of both ways. But as I said, when Republicans said we don't need black people, they kind of were also actively making it so that black people could not vote.
yeah,
Or that we live in places where our votes would be, because with gerrymandering, they could structure it so that, we get like at best one representative. But if you're just shifting one, you're going to get a lot of those folks who are going to wind up going to Republican Party, and you can guilt them about it. But generally
mhm,
speaking, if you're saying, "Oh, you're a horrible person," well, you already thought I was a horrible person, so F you. People do a lot of stuff out of spite. And then the other is that, or they don't vote, and then you have no um, historical connection to the party. You've sort of like this idea that these, especially young voters, are idiots, and then they turn my age and magically are
yeah,
are good, responsible moderates, which doesn't really happen if there's no connection to the party from the start.
yeah.
So
Well, this is the thing. Like, it drives me insane every time I see Charlie Kirk or some, creepy ass right winger bragging about how they, stole like all the internet shit from like internet self promotion from Obama and all of
Mhm.
that, and how they've been so effective at rallying the youth, and they're the party of the youth now. And it's not,
Untrue.
and they do. Oh, but like that's the message that they're putting forward, and they're putting like this is what young people want now. And they just keep hammering it, and everyone in the party is like, oh wow, that's awesome. But they are actually doing a very effective. They are targeting young people, and they're doing so very, very effectively. And it's scary. It's really, really
Oh,
scary.
yeah.
Because we
Well,
also have a lot of young men being radicalized to begin with,
mhm.
especially like through people like Andrew Tate, and even like people like Elon Musk. All of these men, like there are a lot of like really horrible male role models right now, um, and we're not doing enough to counter it. And I'm putting regular, people who aren't necessarily politicians in that category as well. We're not doing enough. And
Oh,
some
yeah.
people are being too dismissive.
Well, Obama ran of hope and change, and Clinton was about taking our country back. Those are terms that are effective. And then I
Mhm.
think that sort of revolution. I mean, there was a Reagan revolution in the '80s, so that's had existed, but Republicans definitely have co-opted that sort of changing
Oh, yeah.
for the better, an anti-establishment view, which helps because the idea, no matter who's in power, the establishment is sort of the multicultural, uh, liber- liberal society that we have that they
I
resent and
don't
want no
think
part of.
so.
But
I don't, I, oh,
that's what they view
oh,
as.
okay. I was like, excuse me. I'm pretty like, no, that is not what it is
So
in
they view
reality.
themselves as being persecuted by, I mean, and it goes from everyone, even Bill Maher. He thinks that there's drag queens and pronouns and all of this, and he can't tell the same joke he might have told 30 years ago, and he's being oppressed by it, even though he's a very wealthy, pampered celebrity, and he's fine.
Mhm.
But I think those guys really, I think a lot of men, and it helps because they are often white men who don't so if you're a white person, especially if you don't have a lot of money, you don't have the connect in a society, you tend to think that, well, F this society that is not treating me as I should be treated. I have so much resentment
Mhm.
for this, and this sort of multicultural liberal society is wrong and terrible, and what you're trying to impose on us. And they've come right out. Before, it was
Yeah.
ideas like you're saying, oh, our society is we are colorblind and wonderful, and now they're sort of saying like, no, Western society is white, and white
Yeah.
society is what is civilized and wonderful, like Stephen Miller when he was giving his
And
um
they're very open about it, scarily so.
Mhm. Oh yeah, they have no they are not afraid now to kind of be right out there. So
Mhm.
that goes back to the messaging. If you deal with a party that doesn't use dog whistles anymore, you can't check them as if they're using dog whistles. So, so much of the rhetoric can sound like rhetoric from the '90s against Republicans.
Mhm.
And there's confusion about it because, like, no one really wants to go to war with them. So you do this typical, and Obama did this in Wisconsin. It was great because after, obviously, Ron Johnson is awful plutocrat who wants to get rid of Social Security, but that specific rhetoric is something you would always use against. Um, Democrats would also often use against Republicans who want to cut programs, to cut social program, but now you're dealing with like a party that promotes violence and a party that
Yeah.
um, supports election denialism. And Carrie Lake could be
Yeah.
governor. which means Arizona's off the table in 2024 because she's not going to
Yeah.
acknowledge the Biden victory. So that's the part that's pretty scary. So
I mean, there really is just so, like, and I realize I keep saying this over and over again, but they just walk it off. Like, no matter what it is, like, they will come out there, give like a full on Hitler speech and just be like, what are you talking about? That's fine. And there's no, I think at one point there was a thing where I guess both sides would do the like, oh no, that's not us. We're sorry, we wouldn't, distancing themselves. And I think that Republicans have figured out that isn't actually effective,
mhm.
and that it's 1,000 times more effective to just be like, no, what they said was fine. That's what they believe. I don't necessarily believe it, but that's what they believe. And it works really well, unfortunately. And it doesn't work as well to, try and be this, party in, sorry, we're going to put our compliments up. Thank you, Gary. And sorry, little goo goots today. But we can't do the same politics that we did in the 90s. And someone, brought up in the comments about people saying both parties are the same. And that's the same guy who sent us some lovely compliments. And there was some discussion about that. Here's the thing. There was a point where, I'm not saying they were both the same, but they both sort of behaved the same. Republicans did dog whistles, and Democrats were like, we are just like Republicans, but slightly less crazy.
Mhm.
And, that worked to some degree, especially in the 90s. And, I think that Democrats are very much still trying to sort of go with that route and go with this graciousness, like, oh no, not all Republicans are going to break into Nancy Pelosi's house and beat her husband with a hammer. No, we don't think that, never. This guy was, obviously just his own thing, much
Well,
like David S.
and
Pumpkin.
it's a little obviously politics is far more complex than this, but I think from many ways for the average voter, it can be like Pepsi versus Coke or McDonald's versus Burger King, and you're sort of well, isn't they're sort of the same, right? There's slight
Yeah,
differences, and if you are inside the marketing of either, you believe it's existential and you believe that there are clear differences, and why can't everyone see how different Coke is to Pepsi, and we'll have a
yeah,
challenge, and it's but I do think that is the making an existential case has been tough because part of the challenge has been sort of conceding that Republicans were right about certain things, which is always I thought a mistake, which is just that oh they're actually right about they actually do believe in low deficits and small government, which they don't, right?
no, they don't.
And you
And
never should,
some of them are
should be
actually
very
coming
clear
out
what
now
they
and
are.
saying, yeah, but
That they are they
they're not for small government. They're only for small government like what we've been saying forever. They only believe that insofar as like how they're um, taxing rich people, and guns. Otherwise, they love big government. They've always loved big government.
well, yes, they
They've
want the government to control other people as an extension. It's just very authoritarian.
mhm,
And then of course having my own, my own guns, my own right, and whites, Christian fascism.
yeah,
But yeah, I would think, and again, this goes back to the Coke, Pepsi, McDonald's, Burger King argument. If you have any of your if anyone in there is saying, "Isn't it just soda? Isn't it just burgers?"
yeah.
Instead of saying, "Oh my god, you guys are such idiots. How can you not know that the difference in a Whopper and a Big Mac? How can you not know the difference between our very good fries at McDonald's and the crappy fries at you that isn't effective. What's effective is like why would
Why
anyone
is it better?
why are they
Um,
thinking that it's the same? How can we compute it? And what's happened is that anyone who thinks they're the same, and I don't, but I'm very been into politics for years, right?
yeah.
So anyone, but people who do, they argue that you are idiots, you are spoiled, you are on TikTok too long. And Republicans don't do that. Republicans have been like, here's why you should come out. The establishment has failed you. And that was with Trump. Trump did not
Yeah.
get out irregular voters by saying you've been stupid and you were stupid, and that's why Obama won twice. It is your fault that Obama won twice. It is your fault that the Affordable Care Act exists. It is your fault, your fault, your fault. That is not a MAGA rally. Instead, Republicans are very, Trump especially was like, the establishment failed you. The Republicans in office at the time failed you. The new Republicans are going to help you, and we're going to have a revolution of the common man, the forgotten man. And that is obviously much more effective because it's not calling people idiots.
Yeah. And the thing is, the Democratic Party very much did try, I wouldn't say them specifically. I think at one point it was considered like stability for the parties to be only slightly different. Like that was what stability was, rather than, the Republican Party being super far right and the Democratic Party being, nominally liberal, which is crazy radical liberal in the United States. I think that was considered sort of the ideal, and people often present it as if it was an ideal. And so while I don't think it's the case anymore, I do think that if you try and present, oh, we're basically the same, wink, wink, and we're slightly less crazy, people aren't always going to pick up on that. People don't always pick up on subtleties.
Well, the pushing of the bipartisan infrastructure deal, even though it's not particularly bipartisan, not all Republicans voted for it.
Yeah.
But then that creates a situation of like, oh, so if McConnell had controlled the Senate, that still would have passed, even though he probably would not, and that creates a scenario of like, oh, well, I like these roads and bridges, but Republicans would have done this as well. And you don't make it as clear that no, they would not have. Like all they're going to do once they get power is, because all they talk about now are pronouns and drag queen story hours. And that's what's so frustrating about this.
Only talk about things about which they can get hysterical and make other people hysterical.
And achieve. It's very easy to bully marginalized groups. So you can ban drag queen story hours. You can ban critical race theory and stuff like that. You can, in schools, you can make marginalized people's lives harder and more difficult. And they can yell at Dr. Fauci and blame him for everything that happened in 2020. But they're not going to magically make the economy improve. And the fact that anyone thinks that a divided government, that Republicans would have any interest in Biden fixing things, because, even if they forced him to do it their way and he agreed for the sake of the nation, it would still be his victory, right? So they have no interest in that. They have no interest.
No, they also have no interest in him uniting the nation. And I did not say this earlier when we were talking about the whole oh, he was going to unify the nation thing. No, there was nothing, absolutely nothing that he was ever going to do that was going to unify, that they were going to go wow, he really did good. He kept that promise. He unified us. We feel very unified now. They were never going to give him that. It was always going to be, and I think I said this even before he was the nominee, pushing that line meant that no matter what, people were always going to be able to say, oh, see, you didn't unify the nation. You did something we don't like. Therefore, that's not unity. And
Trump, remember, running was sort of like, I'm going to make the people you dislike hurt. And that's a campaign promise he ultimately delivered, right? And Biden, or Obama, when I'm going to make it so the other side is polite, is not anything that they can actually deliver on. And so Trump was far more successful at saying, and DeSantis as well.
Yeah. They absolutely present it as Democrats are going to ruin your life because they're going to, molest your children. They're literally going to the well of, they want to molest your children. That is how far they are willing to go. So I think I think it makes we gotta balance it out a little bit, is what I'm saying here. We can't just be oh, Shannon, I love you, but we're not the party that's actively trying to kill you is not effective messaging. I understand the desire to I understand why people want it to be, and it makes sense, but we actually have to say, here's where the Republicans are terrible and here's where we're good, and they are actually bad. And we do have to present it as, we are the majority, and we think you're great, come and join us. Rather than, we are the adults in the room and you should really listen to us because we were given permission to be hall monitor or something. Like it doesn't.
Republicans are rarely on the defensive. So, after this, this weekend, they should be on the defensive. And I think what happens is what benefits them, and they sort of did this pretty quickly, right? Which is not, again, something that happened. I thought this should have happened. We talked about this with with Kavanaugh and Barrett when they were campaigning after them, which is obviously, look, no one should be harassing. I'm not a support of people harassing people when they're trying to have dinner. That's fine. But the problem is, you can't vote these people out, and Americans feel as if they're powerless, that they have a sense of these are these robed masters who are in office forever, and that is not effective to democracy. And you can force that issue, but instead it's just like you get Alito whining that anyone's ever criticizing him. And then after a clear almost assassination attempt, Republicans are able to spin it as, oh, this is crime. It's Joe Biden's America. There's crime everywhere. So, of course, the crazy Black Lives Matter supporter with the hammer broke in and tried to kill Nancy Pelosi. It's all crime. It's like, oh, it's just a crazy crime world, even though it's obviously political.
Yeah, they're always trying to turn it to their thing. I just want to address something real quickly. Fun fact, I used to do Black Bloc for a very long time. And having covered extremism also for a very long time, I got to say, there are so many more moderates and centrists who have gone to the far right than there are far left people. There just are. You go to these message boards and all of them say, well, I liked Bill Clinton. Back in the day, and I was okay with, I was okay when they said safe, legal, and rare. But now that they want to murder babies as they're coming out of the as they're coming down the birthing canal. I'm a little goo-goots today. But yeah, almost all of them are former moderates that have made the switch. It's not people like me. It really isn't.
No, I mean, a lot of the focus was on, and you weren't a Stein voter in 2016, but a lot of the focus were on Stein voters.
By the way, our actual
it's like 1% of the, which, talking about states that Obama had won, like even Wisconsin by 7 points. He almost won Michigan by 10 points. And Stein got 1%, less than 1% in some of those states. So the larger problem was that a lot of clear, as you said, Obama voters, Clinton voters, like when Democrats were winning the Rust Belt, those voters went to Trump. And it was like in Florida, I was covering the Into the Storm, the QAnon documentary, and every one of those examples, there are people who, these aren't crazy radical moderate leftists or anyone who voted for Stein. These were often people who had voted for Obama twice, who had who were Clinton people. They were the sort of prototypical Democratic voter that Democrats really want, which is sort of working class white people, not college educated. And a lot of them just got radicalized either by Fox News or right-wing radio, because we had sort of seeded that.
And frankly, it's a lot easier to radicalize people like them than someone like me, who is like fairly, concrete in their views and has been so for a very long time. And by the way, fun fact, actual leftists think that the Green Party is this far away from being regular liberals. Like, that is, like, we're not like, oh man, they're totally on the far left. Like, that is not, in fact, true. I don't know
Would be, yeah. Well, it should be
It's like they're
useful,
marching
right?
on the sidewalks too, is what people would say.
Uh, yeah. I mean, I keep seeing that. With all respect, I keep seeing that the problem is again in 20. So if there was a business, if I take over a business that had profits of 10 million and within 4 years it's $1 million in the red. It's not just that it's lost $1 million. I lost it $11 million. And so,
Yeah.
there was a clear, these are, because especially those states weren't treated as like, oh my God, if the 1%, because there's always a nuisance candidate, right? Like if you don't like
Hmm.
someone and it's a nuisance candidate, like Obama shoved those off because you're winning by like 10% of the vote, and so forth. And he was dominating in the Rust Belt. And so what had happened in those 4 years was a significant deterioration. And yes, it would have been great if Clinton had hung on and we didn't get Trump. But the larger problem is that we were losing these voters. We're losing these working class
Hmm.
white voters, and they become radicalized. They become part of QAnon. They become part of these Trump voters, and we're not getting them back. We're not communicating to them in any way that's going to get them back. And all I see is a not particularly additive but subtractive rhetoric, which is just like, okay, well, anyone who voted for Trump is irredeemable. Again, even if they're Obama voters, okay, well, then where are the new voters? Well, young voters are all idiots. It's like, okay, well, what is your business model? Like,
Yeah.
how are you
It's
going
like,
to succeed?
it's not good. It's not good. And like, I also don't, I'm sorry, you will never convince me that Jill Stein voters are actual leftists, but but even if that's the case, oh my God, why does anyone think it's like so fabulously effective to keep being like, who's garbage and should also vote for us? This group of people.
Well,
Hmm?
and I think
Like,
some people are they're, well, it's a larger issue, right, Robin? There's folks who
yeah.
are they think it's a ticket box. So for them, these are the views Obama has. These are the views Hillary Clinton has, or Joe Biden, or Kamala Harris. And if they're essentially almost all the same, then Kamala Harris or Tina Kotek should do just as well as Barack Obama. Nothing else matters. Like the
Except
idea,
people
which is
aren't that
not how
sensible.
that's not how things work, right? And so people vote for how you make them feel, and you hate. And I know there's like a lot of folks hate this. They want it to be that people are Vulcans, but it's not the case. They go for who connects with them, who sort of Obama was great about that. And
He's extreme. Even you watch the speech that he's been giving over the week, like, it's just like, oh my God, he is so good at connecting with people and so good at just being freaking charming. It's
oh yeah.
like dead impressive.
Oh yeah, and I think that is sort of very important, like making you feel part of something larger and part of something that you can actually help with is much more effective than dragging people. But going back to the sign thing, I think people, if you're sort of have trouble believing this. They have trouble like someone voting against the status quo or the establishment and making a blow against the system is so illogical to them and so frustrating. But it's not. It's just essentially, I'm not going to vote for the
Mhm.
establishment candidate.
Yeah.
And you can reject that thinking. You can say it's juvenile or something, but at the same time, running as the establishment and saying I've been able to get things done and whatever is
Yeah.
how a lot of Democrats run for stuff. Like I have the biggest and longest
Yeah.
resume. And when other people say, "Oh no, I want to vote," there's still a problem. There's still people have problems with that. They're still kind of like, "Well, Herschel Walker is too stupid to represent me," which is
Yeah.
not, I don't think resonates because you're insulting a lot of voters who sound like Herschel Walker. But there's an implication that those voters should know that they're stupid, right?
Yeah.
Like they should know that they deserve to
Mhm.
be taken
Yes.
care of. And that's not how people respond. They're like, no, Lauren Boebert sounds like me. She expresses my prejudices. She expresses my ignorance of things. I like her. And you can counter that by connecting to those voters, but in a positive way, but then being like, well, Lauren Boebert doesn't have the right resume. Herschel Walker is too dumb. Is it going to work? I thought what worked with Dr. Oz was pinning him as a fraud rather than trying to say he's
and out of touch.
Yeah.
And, you know, that is extremely effective rhetorically.
So what else is going on? You had written about, we talked a bit about the Portland scam thing that they'd done, which had been helpful to.
I mean, yeah. I mean, so long story short, if you didn't read the article, Trump people, the DHS basically tried to create a whole scenario. It tried and effectively did create a whole scenario in Portland where, you know, they were able to make a case for it being, oh my God, Portland's burning down to the ground because of Antifa. And, you know, they didn't like the fact that Antifa is not an actual organization. And so, because they wanted to be able to say that it was, and that has been like a big thing forever, where Republicans are like, no, Antifa is an organization. Bring me the head of the leader of Antifa. So they basically invented their own term for Antifa in order to call it a group. It was like anarchist, violent Antifa, anarchist inspired, which doesn't even really make sense as what would that even be? Like, and I say this as someone who
that reminds me of
in anti-fascist activism, and also, you know, I mean, technically I'm an anarchist, so I go with the
nice like in the mid 90s they
libertarian socialist.
They would have albums, that soundtracks for movies that would be music inspired by the film.
Yes.
They weren't in the film. They were inspired, which is as if like someone like, oh, the Nutty Professor has inspired me to write this song. No, it's just like, you want your
about the Nutty Professor.
No. You want to put your hip rap song on this CD? We'll place it out. It was like really shameless because there was just no sense of like, this will not even, it's not even over the closing credits. They used to do that. But we'll run it over the closing credits. Here it's like, oh no, we'll do videos with clips from the movie, but it will never actually be in the movie.
I don't remember that, but I'll look into it.
It was a whole thing for a while. I remember a friend of mine and classmate was convinced that Rock Me Amadeus was from the movie Amadeus. It's like, well, and how would that have worked? It's like they played over the credits, right? It's like that would have been awesome, but that did not occur. I think it's one of the first impacts, the first evidence of the Mandela effect.
Yes,
because she was convinced that Rock Me Amadeus played over the closing credits of the film Amadeus, which
it would be pretty awesome if it did. I mean, one of my, you know, I've always been really fond of that one lady who like totally dissed Salieri in the backstage, because this lady was like, oh my God, how can you like Mozart? He's was it like, he's so hideous. I like Salieri. And then she's like, a woman of taste thinks only of talent. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, because yeah, fuck that dude and also fuck that lady. They were terrible. I have hot takes on movies that I haven't seen for like 20 years.
Yeah, Amadeus is great.
Sorry, I'm a little.
Yeah, it's the witching
But here's
hour.
the thing: if Republicans don't like it's very basic here. If they don't like the story that is happening, they create a new story and just go with it. Is kind of the moral of today's story. They don't like them. Yeah.
the gay was very interesting because, again, with Herschel Walker, these are clearly things that happened. He
Yeah.
paid for these abortions. He, to one point, forced a woman to, at least bullied her into having an abortion. And Republicans are responding as if Democrats are trying to ruin him. They did this with Kavanaugh as well. Like, you're even mentioning or bringing this up. These are obviously lies. You're trying to ruin this good person. And they hammer it and play onto victimization. And it works to a degree. And here they're doing the thing of like complete, oh, it wasn't really an assassination attempt. It was a gay hammer fight.
And this is the thing, that's a power move. A move like that is about power. Coming up with the absolute most ridiculous, nonsensical theory and being like, this is obviously what happened. There's more to this story. Look at all of this like important evidence that we've compiled of people speculating on the internet about this. It's ball busting. It's spitting in your face and telling you it's raining. It's saying we are going to go with whatever narrative we decide, whether you like it or not, whether it bears any sort of resemblance to the truth or not. That's what we're doing. And fuck you. And I hope you don't like it. It is literally fuck you and I hope you don't like it. The musical.
It doesn't matter what is true. It matters what I can make you believe. And Republicans are experts at that, and I think we can be caught on our haunches of sort of like, oh my god, we presume they will defeat ourselves. I've commented on this before. We presume that Republicans will be like, oh well, this is terrible and we won't let Trump run again, and we will stop DeSantis because he did something so evil by sending those migrant. But it's not how anything works, and you've got to like hammer the message of how bad those folks are, and not in a sense of we need to tone down the temperature. Political violence in general is a bad thing, but more specifically, this is a party of political violence that is going to, because for Republicans, they're very clear the political violence will end when there's a marginalized Democratic Party. We will probably only assassinate you every once in a while, but they so they can deliver peace through.
Well, this is the thing. Ultimately, they can't be happy unless we don't exist. Because if you look at their actual goal, like their policy goals or whatever, what they really want is for us to not exist. They don't have any, it's not, their issues are not policy related. They want people to stop calling them racist. They want people to be more tolerant when they, send them rape threats on Twitter. They want to be able to use racial slurs and have no one be insulted. That's what they want. And none of those things are even remotely legislative. Like it has nothing to do with politics. They just literally want us to go away as people. And I do think that that's something that we should also be hammering. And because most of the things that they are mad about are not things that politicians can do. I don't know if you saw the other thing I wrote yesterday about the people in my homeland of Italy being all, oh, this is a great time that we, it's so great that we have a fascist prime minister, because now people are going to be so much nicer to us fascists because they were so intolerant of us before. Like fascists are mad that people were being intolerant of them. Fascists. They're like, we were silenced. That's literally like if you're a fascist, like that is your plan. Your plan is to silence other people. And they're like, we were silenced and people were mean. We couldn't even hold our head up as we walked down the street.
Yeah, that's that is scary. Hopefully Italy, because I was planning on doing my 50th in Italy. Hopefully it'll clear up in the next couple of years so I can.
So hopefully it'll clear up because I will, that way I can live there in one of like the, $5 houses that they're always giving out. You know, that's like Italy, like these little villages in Italy are always like, hey, come live in this like random little town and you can have a giant castle for $5 as long as you renovate it and live there and be cool.
That sounds like the
And
money trap, though. Like, isn't there? What's the catch? Is the house
really,
in
you just want
there?
people. I mean, this is actually like a whole different thing, but the population of Italy is very much aging, and it's also like, you know, there's the joke about like, you know, oh, there's this town in Italy where everyone lives to 100 because they, you know, eat carbs and drink wine, which is I'm always happy to see that article when that comes out. But basically, they want to revitalize these communities where, you know, there's underpopulation. There aren't a lot of people living there. The village of Pinocchio, which does exist, only has about 14 people in it, which means that someday I will go there and they will make me queen. This is obviously a very true thing that I am saying. And so you can buy these houses for literally like $5. And as long as you like build them up and are able to live there without taking a job, if you don't have Italian citizenship, like if, you know, if one of us were to move there, I have Italian citizenship, but if you were to move there, you would be, you know, because you work from home. So you wouldn't be like, you know, taking a job, and you would just live there and be awesome. And that's what they want in these villages.
The village of Pinocchio.
Yeah. There's like 14 people, and I'm going to go there and they're going to be like, oh my God, finally you have arrived. It's going to be really awesome. It's going to be like Princess Caribou. Yeah, deep cut. Princess Caribou. It was a movie. And also a real thing that happened.
So with that, the Halloween is next week, tomorrow, and then it becomes Christmas time, because I'm big on Christmas for the full 2 weeks. If I have to drag all the stuff in the attic, I want it to be. It's too much. It's just too much trouble. I'm not doing it. My wife and I had this discussion. I didn't have to twist her arm because she likes Christmas, but it's like if I have to pull, it's like 10 boxes. It's like if I'm doing this, it needs to be longer than 3 weeks. And I believe in Christmas subsuming.
No, it starts after Thanksgiving at least.
No,
like you can't start before Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving is part of Christmas. I believe in a hostile takeover, and it's like part of it. Like I'll wear the Santa hat while carving the turkey, and then that's the whole thing. But I am going to be away for a couple weeks. So we'll see what you guys wind up doing, whether you and Jamie in my absence. But you'll probably definitely want to do an election special, right? As we discuss all the terrible things that happen.
Yeah.
Anyhow, well, happy holidays, everyone, and thank you, Robin.
Hold on 1 second. The real one is dead, or was dead. She was dead the whole time. Twist. Sorry. You know how I feel about the Romanovs. They're my favorites. Okay. I mean, not really. You know what I'm saying. Okay. Bye, you guys.
Bye-bye. Take care.